appeal rights that each citizen has.
Parties wishing to appeal a decision of this commission are encouraged to engage independent legal counsel to determine the appeal rights and deadlines. Generally, appeals of metropolitan boards and commissions are initiated by filing a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery Court within 60 days of entry of the final decision.
Thank you very much. All right, the proposed resolutions that we previously circulated and are attached to your agenda will now open up the public hearings. And Councilman Mendez, welcome. And if you would, sir, would you explain the purpose and intent of the resolutions and the reasons why it's in the best interest of the citizens of Davidson County?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm currently the vice chair of the council's charter revision committee. Our chair, Angie Henderson, is at another commission meeting, and can't make it. So, will that work? Yes, sir. All right. Thanks. So, just again for the video, I'm Bob Mendez, vice chair of the charter revision committee. Our chair can't make it today. So we'll have a resolution at our next council meeting next week, which will propose 4 charter amendments to go onto the August ballot. And I can go through the 4 of them briefly, and then I know there's people from the administration here to talk about several of them. The first amendment would amend Article 19 of the charter, which describes how the charter may be amended. And I'll circle back to more details about this one. The second one would amend the qualifications for police officers in MNPD. This one is at the request of the department. The third one would change Article 10 of the charter as it relates to certain requirements for the Metro Board of Health. This again is at the request of the department. And then finally, the fourth one has to do with creating a Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, again at the request of the department. And I would be happy to discuss the first one about the Article 19 in more detail, and then leave it to the administration and members of the various departments to discuss the second through fourth one, if that's okay with y'all.
Please do.
All right, so Article 19, good afternoon. As y'all know, amending the charter under Article 19 has become more or less of a litigation machine for Metro. We're up to spending $1 million or more per year in legal fees for the Election Commission and for Metro to deal with various litigation regarding referendum. And it is clear, once you read the appellate court decisions, that there are things in Article 19 of the charter that are confusing and have required litigation to resolve. And given the fact that the jurisprudence covers a couple decades, litigation continues. I don't personally think all the litigation is well-founded, but one way or the other, there has been litigation. The amendment you have before you that will be before the council soon for consideration and put on the August ballot is an attempt to stabilize Article 19 and bring more certainty and less litigation to how amending the charter works. And I'll just give you the 50,000-foot level, and I'm happy to answer questions. One of the areas of litigation has been that the charter sets up a minimum threshold for signatures to get on the ballot that floats from election to election. It's based on turnout at the most recent Metro general election, and the amendment would set a fixed number of signatures rather than have it floating from election to election. And it would set the threshold at 15% of registered voters with an expanded 75 days to get the signature. Currently, it's only 30. Secondly, the amendment would allow review of the form of the petition before signatures are gathered. And that's been a major sticking point for the public. Currently, all the signatures are gathered, and then any litigation happens after that. And naturally, people who have signed the petition and gone and collected signatures feel aggrieved just by the idea that they put time and energy into signing a petition, and then there's litigation over it. The amendment would pull the litigation to before the signatures are gathered. Other counties, in fact, 94 of all other 94 counties in the state have a process where any challenges to the form of the petition happen before signatures are gathered. And so we would be matching that and hopefully have people be able to resolve any litigation before people put energy into the signatures. Another area of litigation has been how the timelines work between getting signatures, counting, having the election commission count the signatures, and then getting approval from the election commission. There's a more detailed timeline for how everything is supposed to work, again, in the hope of getting greater clarity and less litigation. Next, I would say that there's been litigation over what exactly can be determined before a referendum item goes to the public, and the amendment attempts to capture the appellate case law in describing exactly what kind of challenges are appropriate in advance. That is, again, just a high-level summary. I'm happy to answer any questions about the specifics. But the idea is, it was just in the news last week. It's already like $750,000 on the most recent litigation, and it's apparently the Election Commission has decided to ask the Tennessee Supreme Court for permission to appeal, which will drive further costs. So we are spending as a city somewhere in the vicinity of $1 million a year just on the litigation about whether to have referendum or not. And this is an effort to clean that up, pull litigation before people put the energy into signatures, and just add more clarity, less cost.
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion that as a procedure, we get anyone who wants to speak in support of Amendment Number 1 to speak now, and then anyone that wants to speak in opposition to Amendment 1, follow them, and then we'll go to Amendment 2 and do the same process so that we don't kind of have to listen to multiple amendments at the
Sure.
same time. I think if we can focus on one at a time, that would be
Well,
good.
is there anyone here in support of the amendment? Mr. Jameson? And are there people here in opposition to it? I see no opposition.
Mr. Jameson, do you have any comments?
I can't really add to Councilman Mendez's description. The administration.
You want to come up so you can be on the mic?
Yeah, you might want to come up and make that comment on the record. Thank you.
We just take this one and go to.
That's good.
I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze on this, but no, the administration is in full support. I cannot add to Councilman Mendez's very apt description.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr.
Can I
Jameson.
ask a question now? You want to wait?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure, please.
You mentioned that this is going to be based on the electorate from the previous Metro election. Is that correct?
Currently, that's the way it is.
And is that the way it's going to continue?
It's going to be a percentage of all registered voters going forward.
Okay.
So it won't any longer, people won't be able to game high turnout or low turnout elections about when they seek to have the charter amended. It'll just be a consistent, predictable 15% threshold of registered voters in the county.
And is there any anticipation of people challenging who is a valid registered voter?
Well, the election commission, perhaps that happens every time signatures are gathered. And I understand that people who who try to get signatures on petitions typically aim for above the threshold, knowing that they'll inadvertently at least scoop up some people who aren't registered to vote. So the election commission, I understand now, gets all the signatures on a petition, and they do a meticulous signature by signature comparison to make sure the person is a registered voter. And there have been instances where people who are interested in basically spot checking the election commission will use open records laws to get copies of it all and do their own check. So I would expect, there's nothing about what we're doing that changes the process for how the Election Commission would check signatures or how somebody might dispute that.
And for those who have not looked at this, those that may be watching this now or later on, I believe there's a component that talks about making sure that there's more definition and that considerations are made about what does this do to a budget, and that all of that needs to be considered prior to placing it on the ballot. Is that correct?
Correct. This is a hot area of litigation over the last several years. Has been that, well, according to courts of appeal, some of the petition items that have been out there are flatly unconstitutional, flatly against state law. And but the way it works now is somebody gets a petition, a whole bunch of people sign it, signatures are gathered, and then you don't put it to the test about whether it's lawful until after all that's happened. And this will pull all that legitimate checking to the front end before people are invested in going to get signatures.
Great explanation, and that is what I wanted, because I think sometimes people need that background as well as understanding the language. They need the background that created the language.
Definitely. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mendez, let me make sure I understand a couple of things about this.
Sure.
The 15% threshold, where did you come up with that number?
Well, that matches what the other 94 counties in the state do also.
Okay. And the other thing I noticed about this, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong in my reading of this, is that basically what you're trying to do here is shift the litigation away from the Election Commission after all the signatures have been verified, and really make any litigation occur against this commission for approving the petition pre-solicitation of signatures. Is that an accurate summary of what's going on?
I would say yes, and there are, yes, we're definitely trying to pull the litigation before signatures are gathered, like
Right.
happens in the other 94 counties. But then there's some low-hanging fruit of stuff that just needs to be fixed. We've litigated for a couple decades now which is the proper election to
Right.
measure the threshold by, and that's just silly that we keep litigating that. And so there's the fixing the low-hanging fruit and then pulling the litigation, if any, to before the signatures are gathered.
Okay.
Any other questions about amendment number 1?
I have a question about the registered voters.
Mhm.
So is that any registered voter? If I registered in 2000 and I haven't voted in 15 years, am I still a registered voter?
Well, I don't know exactly what Davidson County does as far as purging voter files. I know in other counties there's perhaps more aggressive purging of non-voters. So if somebody's on the list with the Davidson County Election Commission and they haven't voted in 20 years, yes, they still count. I'm not aware of what our election commission does as far as inactive voters.
But those people who were on the list and hadn't voted for 20 years, if there was an election and they went in to vote, they could vote too, right?
Sure, and I think we all have a common interest in getting everybody who's registered to vote every time.
I mean, this looks to me like what you're trying to do is come up with kind of the same standard for every charter amendment petition, that it's 15% of the registered voters, and that's a pretty identifiable number. You look at what the Election Commission shows as the total number of voters, and you say, okay, 15% of that is blank, and that standard comes through. I mean, it might change a little bit if registered voters increase or decrease from election to election, but you're not going to see the big swings up and down depending on whether you pick a high turnout election or a low turnout election. I think that's what I hear you saying, and it appears to be the case.
That is the case, and when I wear my lawyer hat, I like the additional certainty. Wearing the counsel at large hat, there's just so much frustration in the community from whether you're a person who has signed petitions recently and then you feel aggrieved when the courts pull it off the ballot, or if you're somebody who's frustrated about the petitions and can't understand what government is doing and putting it on, and then it's off and then it's on. Like, no matter where you are in that, the idea of trying to address some of this before all the signatures happen, like, hopefully we reduce the litigation, but at a minimum, even if we're not going to reduce it, at least let's get it out of the way before, 10, 15,000 people sign a piece of paper.
So I appreciate the clarity around registered voters, because a registered voter and an eligible voter in my mind are two different things, and I think the Election Commission distinguishes that. So it is a much broader base if you're a registered voter. My other question is, where you have at least one registered voter to submit, it's not really clear if that's the petition under 19.03B. Is it intended that this one individual can submit a petition that then has to have all of these requirements, and that submission is intended to be the petition?
Yes.
That wasn't as clear to me as I think it could be.
But ultimately, the idea is that that person would submit what I would call a proposed petition that we then have to measure against these standards. And then when we approve it, then it actually can then start to be circulated for signatures.
Yes.
That's how I read that. Is that
Right, and if I can just ask for your comment, Ms. Short-Jones, in 1903B, on the second line where it says Davidson County shall file.
The petition.
Insert the words "the petition."
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
good catch?
All right, any other questions? Well, we will close the public hearing as to amendment number 1, and then we'll go to amendment number 2. Is anybody here in support of amendment number 2? Yes, could you identify yourselves and come forward, please, sir?
Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Seth Waltonbaugh, the personnel manager for the police department.
Daniel Newburn, I'm the commander of Police Human Resources Division.
Glad to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And first of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to talk about this amendment. This is something that has been on our wish list for quite a while. You may be familiar with the Civil Service Commission. Chairman Farmer of the commission reminded us recently that this has been on our wish list for about 20 years. During that time, it's gone from something we want to do to something we need to do, and now it's at the point where it's something we have to do. There's a few reasons for that. First of all is there's some outdated language that doesn't reflect current state law, which you may have seen. Our language in the charter says you must be a U.S. citizen. That's no longer the case in Tennessee. You can be a military veteran with 2 years of service and still apply to be a police officer. There's some additional requirements. You would be in the process of getting your citizenship, but we want to make that to be in lockstep with what Tennessee state law has. Another reason is we do think this will help with our continued diversity efforts. We've looked at every aspect of our recruitment, from physical testing to other things, to make sure that there's not an adverse impact on any group. We think this will help, but just to kind of give you an overview of the recruitment process, the police officer training is probably, as somebody who's worked in human resources for Metro for 18 years, the most complicated and the most thorough recruitment that we do outside of maybe a nationwide executive search. But for an entry-level position, it's a lot for applicants. And during that process, we go from anywhere from 2,300 applicants down to about 268 that get an actual conditional offer of employment. Of those 268, so about 11%, 40 to 50% of them are not going to meet the physical standards of the U.S. Army or Navy entrance. So that puts a burden on our recruitment staff and getting them through this process. They can ask for a waiver in order to attend the academy, and Civil Service Medical Examiner assists them with that process, but we just don't want to lose applicants by putting these kind of barriers in place. And I don't know, you may not have seen, but Chief Drake has penned a letter to the council asking for support of this. And in it, we have the signatures of the Civil Service medical examiner, now the current health department director. He's the one who used to do the exams, and he's in support of it. The human resources director, Shannon Hall, is also on that document, and also Chairman Bill Farmer. So this is something we're all in agreement that it's something that we want and we think is going to help us tremendously going forward. The last and probably the simplest reason for this is in human resources, you want to have job-related standards to point to as to why you may be qualifying or disqualifying people. And having a totally different organization in the U.S. Army, U.S. Navy as our standards is just something that we want to get away from. We'll still have that civil service medical examiner. We'll work closely with them. We could even put it in the civil service rules and policies as far as our physical standards. But right now, it's just there's that disconnect.
So if you looked at what the standards would be under the new procedure if you got away from the Army and Navy standards?
We have looked at that. That's still in kind of the early phases. We've talked with the medical examiner's office, and we're welcome to that, but we have a functional job description for every position in Metro, and that talks about how much you may be expected to lift, how much running may be involved, all those different kind of things. So it would probably point to that. We've also looked at the U.S. Army actually has different retention standards than admission standards, and there could be some pulling in some of that, but probably going to look more at the functional job description and really see what are the functions that you could be expected to do. Recently, we changed our physical test from push-ups and sit-ups and kind of those basic things to more of an obstacle course where you jump over a fence and kind of trying to recreate the kind of things that you might have to do out in the field.
So you don't think there's a concern that you're going to lower your standards from the standpoint of having less qualified people?
No, sir.
No, sir. I'll expand on that if you don't mind. So,
I'd love for you to. That's basically why I asked the question.
No, and as we look at the police department, what Chief Drake is trying to do, it is to get away from a paramilitary organization. We're not military, and that's not what we want to do. We're not at war with anyone. So it's getting more towards the people that possess skill sets that we're looking for. Are they able to reason? Are they able to have empathy? Are they good communicators? None of which, by the way, are on the Army military standards. So that's what we're trying to get away from. So when I say that we're not lowering the standards, we have very high standards, but it's a shift. And it's a shift from getting away from, really the Army is looking at a 17, 18-year-old that's getting out of high school, and they're going to put them through some pretty rigorous physical training. We're here, they're going to go through a lot of training, but it's training on decision making. And we want those more mature individuals that are going to be applying to come with us. So it's getting away from that. And really, if you look at it, tomorrow I got to go in front of the Civil Service Commission. I got 14 people that are going to request medical waivers tomorrow. Everything from BMI to people that had childhood asthma. I've had asthma since I was a child, and I work here, and I would think that I do a good job. I hope I do. But for us to then deny someone employment from Metro government and from being a police officer because of something that I'm able to do and able to work here, we run into a risk there as well, in the legal field. So that's something that we also want to consider is what legally can I put on this to say, well, that's not a standard that we need to have anymore.
And some folks say that we are the pollen center of America, so we might wind up with no police officers. Anyone have any other questions? All right, we'll close the public hearing as to amendment number 2, and we'll go to number 3. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Is anyone here in support of amendment number 3? Yes, sir. Would you come forward and state your name? And Mr. Jameson.
Do you want to go?
Yeah. Here's that goes forward. Back you up.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner, my name is Tom Sharp. I'm the Policy Director at the Metro Public Health Department. I'd be happy to walk through this. First of all, I want you to know that this has nothing to do with COVID or anything that happened during COVID. This was approved originally by the board in 2019, and then it sort of was held in abeyance during the pendency of the plague, and now we have brought it back to this juncture. In essence, the amendment does 3 things. The first one is to sort of clarify something that was in the original charter, which is, and all of this language, by the way, is from '63. This is all original language, pretty much. And that was to draw a distinction between the Board of Health, which is appointed by the mayor, and the Department of Health. The original charter said that it shall sometimes be known as the board and sometimes the department, which on occasion has caused some confusion about who was in charge of things. But the two major things it does, and the originating interest on behalf of the board, was to remove the requirement from the charter that the director of health be a medical doctor, an MD. They had Metro HR survey peer cities to see how many required that still. It's about 50-50. It is not unusual. It is largely an administrative job. It could still be a doctor. It need not be necessarily. The way this is drafted, the board would set the qualifications for the director of health with the approval of the Metro HR director, and then proceed to hire whoever that individual is. The other main thing is that the practice of public health has evolved considerably over the last 60 years, and we want to add one member to the board to be, so it changes the makeup of the board in a couple of ways. It goes from 6 to 7, and the additional member would be 2 additional members. Well, they're not actually additional, but okay. So right now it's very clinically oriented, the board, and our practice is no longer quite that heavily weighted towards the clinical. So there would be a doctor, either an MD or a doctor of osteopathy. There would be a mental health professional, which currently requires a psychiatrist, which is the second doctor. The board wanted to broaden the field of those individuals who could join the board. A third is a nurse, and then 2, just as it is now, are selected to the board without reference to occupation. So that's 5. And then the other 2 members would be selected from a list of, I think it's 7 or 8 different occupations, all of which have some relevance to the work of the Department of Health. It could be a doctor, could be a nurse, could be a dentist, could be a veterinarian. We run the animal control operation. Could be an attorney, could be a community health worker, could be someone with a background or education in public health or environmental health. We run the air pollution control program. We have a whole division that's a bureau that's environmental health. And so that would bring those folks to that number to 7, make it odd, which just in case you have a difference of opinion. And that's basically what this does.
Any questions?
It changes the word inside. Yeah.
You do that in law also.
Much
Okay.
broader grouping.
There's a little bit of arcane.
Anyone here in opposition? All right, we'll close the public hearing as to amendment number 3.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much. Now we will move on to amendment number 4. Is anyone here in favor of amendment number 4? Yes, could you come forward, please? Identify yourselves.
I'm Mary Peoples, NDOT Council Liaison.
I'm Teresa Costonis, counsel for NDOT.
Philip Jones, Assistant Director of NDOT.
So who wants to go? Terry, is that you?
I guess so. The simple explanation of what this amendment does is that, first of all, very basically, it searches and replaces for the name Public Works and replaces it with the Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure. It also kind of focuses the duties and responsibilities of the department onto things that are either located within the right-of-way or related to transportation. Previously, there were some duties assigned to the preceding department, the Public Works Department, in the charter that weren't really consistent with what current practice has become, that General Services was doing, for example. And so we were kind of trying to focus that on the things that the Department of Transportation would actually do. We also removed from the duties and responsibilities the responsibility to take care of trash or refuse. In terms of that responsibility, although this is not in the charter amendment, I will reassure you that the water services section of the charter, which is 8501 et sec, does allow that department to take on additional responsibilities that are assigned to them by ordinance. And so the plan would be, in conjunction with this amendment, to do an ordinance more officially assigning those responsibilities to the Department of Water Services. Already there is in place a memorandum of understanding approved by resolution of the council that allows for the division of solid waste to be kind of moved from Public Works, as it was at the time, to Metro Water Services. And that has a like a 3-year sunset on it that was placed on it by council. So the ordinance would have the same time period, which would give the administration some time to determine a more permanent solution.
Anyone else wish to speak?
I mean, I could just like to say a few words of the development of this department alone is transformative and innovative. I mean, it's what it makes us qualify for, as far as when it comes to federal dollars. That makes a big difference, that the money that's out there by us being a transportation department, what it makes us eligible for.
Terry, did the requirement that the director be an engineer, was that taken out?
It was previously.
Previously?
Yes.
I thought it was, but I couldn't remember. I noticed in here it wasn't in here. I just wanted to make sure that had already happened. That's not something
Yeah, I
that
want to say like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, something like that.
I vaguely remember that. but
That's right.
It's happened more than a month ago. I don't remember anything.
Me neither.
Okay.
Anyone else? Councilman?
So I'm speaking in support of this, but I want to let you all know a little bit about some conversation that's happened with the council's charter revision committee that relates to this. So when garbage pickup is a big deal in the metro government, it's one of the most important things we do. And as Ms. Castanas mentioned, with this amendment, garbage will no longer be assigned to a department by charter. It'll have to happen by ordinance. There are those of us in the council that feel like that's not the ideal result, but the committee is supporting this, and I'll just give you the background of why. So about a year ago, when the Department of Transportation was created, in fact, even though it wasn't in the charter yet, there was an MOU between the new Department of Transportation and Water Services to have garbage pickup be done by Water Services. At the time, a year ago, I think everybody's intent on the administration level was to, by the time we got to now, to fully figure out what the landscape looked like for who's doing transportation, who's doing garbage pickup, and have a more comprehensive amendment to the charter for all that. The reality is, with garbage, the Red River garbage service imploding with a bankruptcy case about 6 months ago, the administration isn't really to the finish line on how exactly to assign the garbage pickup. So some of us at the committee level felt like this was a little incomplete, because on one hand, it does formally stand up NDOT under the charter, which is very, very important, but it leaves the garbage pickup as a little bit of an orphan that we have to go fix by ordinance. And I say all that not to be anything but supportive of the amendment, but just to let you know, maybe a year, maybe 2 years down the road, maybe garbage pickup is going to find a home in the charter again. And I just don't want you guys to be surprised when you hear that a couple years from now. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Well, we will close the public debate, and that's the last amendment. So we go back to amendment number 1, and any discussion?
Are we gonna vote on each amendment separately? Is that the plan?
Well, I think we should
Yeah.
probably vote on it individually. No, we have a motion?
I have a question,
Okay.
and this goes back to 1903B under that. So it says, you know, at least one registered voter shall file with the Metropolitan Clerk. So there's no limit? There could be 20 people that decide to file something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the reality of it.
No.
And is there any way to, at some point, make some sense of that so it becomes more useful and not a burden? And I think that Councilman Mendez may have an answer to that.
I'm happy to if you guys.
Yes, please, we'll go.
Sure will indulge you. Please.
Right, unlimited number of people could kick off the process, which that is the same as it is now. And if they did so, they'd each have to be subject to meeting the requirements, and if they meet the requirements, then they'd have to go gather signatures. So I think that if there was an effort by a whole bunch of people at the same time to amend the charter differently, that definitely creates an administrative burden. That's something that we're not really changing, because right now it just takes somebody to kick the process off. And so that part's not changing. So I don't know that it's a different scenario, and if 20 people did that, they'd still be subject to the same burdens of having to have it read in a legal way and then go get the signatures.
Any further discussion? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
And just for purpose of clarification, are we moving with your
The petition.
proposed
With the
revised?
With the addition
With
of
the
petition
amendment, yeah,
in
the amendment to the
19.3.
amendment. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Moving on to amendment number 2.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, move the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Not hearing done. We'll move to amendment 3.
Move for its approval.
Second.
All right, and so, any opposition thereto? Well, it passes unanimously, and so it is adopted. And moving on to number 3.
No, I think
That was 3.
I'm sorry, number 4. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. All right, having no new business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move. My favorite motion.
Any opposition? Thank you, and thank you all. Thank you very much. Very
Thanks, guys.
instructive.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.